Hello, and welcome to the Black Ponder. And it's your boy, your host with the most. Now let me stop being stupid. Today, my name's Neil Trotter, and we're going to be talking about some Eastern philosophy this time. We're going to be talking about some philosophy of religion. We're going to be focusing on the Buddhist text, the Dhammapada. Now, the Dhammapada is one of those definitive texts of Buddhism. The quotes from this text are known to be what was directly said from the Buddha, recorded by his disciples at the time the Buddha was alive. So all types of things are covered in this text. All types of Buddhist concepts. So to make a video about what the Dhammapada is about, that would probably be a 6 to 8 hour long video, right? We're just going to be focusing on one theme of the Dhammapada. What is the Buddhist teaching of the reaction to hatred or negativity, or in this day and age we call the haters, right? How do we respond to that? What's the best way to react to that? To make a constructive, meaningful reaction that's positive and that can create good outcomes. Let's start off with our first quote, shall we? He insulted me. He struck me. He defeated me. He robbed me. For those who get caught up in this, hatred does not cease. He insulted me. He struck me. He defeated me. He robbed me. For those who do not get caught up in this, hatred ceases completely. For never here do hatred cease by hatred. By freedom from hatred they cease. This is a perennial truth. Now that quote was from chapter 1 of the Dhammapada. Twins is what it's called. And it's basically saying that responding to hate with hate is an endless cycle. And it's true. When somebody throws you some negativity, whether it's a mean comment or hatred, retaliation, or they just respond to you in hate, and if you respond in turn with hate, it's just going to keep cycling through this hatred of action, reaction. The only way it stops is by someone to stop the hate. Someone's going to have to stop it. And that's the only way it stops. Hate is never stopped, or negativity is never stopped by responding in turn with negativity. That just perpetuates it. And this is true. Let's move on to our next quote. This comes from chapter 4, titled Flowers. You should not look at others' faults, things done or not done by others, but at things done or not done by yourself. So again, when somebody responds with negativity, it's important to look at yourself first. Oftentimes you look at the other person like, man, why did this person respond to me that way? That guy is a jerk. He's an asshole, right? But first you gotta look at yourself. You gotta be like, okay, how am I gonna respond to this, right? Because that's the first step to stopping that endless cycle. Just as you can make many kinds of garlands from a heap of flowers, there is much good that can be done by one born mortal. The scent of flowers is not blown against the wind, not sandalwood or tagara or jasmine, but the scent of the good is blown against the wind. A good man performs all directions. Of little range is the scent, that is tangara or sandalwood, but the scent of the virtuous is wafted among the gods supreme. So what's being said here? You know, when flowers, they give off good scent, so you can smell them, or when a guy or a girl comes in with a good cologne or perfume, and everybody's like, ooh, who smells good? Who's the person with the nice scent? You know, you get this chain reaction, right, when people smell good, or when you have a nice scent in the room, it spreads. It's like that when you end that cycle and not respond with hatred, but the magnitude is far greater, right? When you don't respond with hatred, when you end that cycle, then what happens is people take notice of it. They're like, whoa, this person did not do what was typically expected. This person did not respond in the same way that the other person responded, and it causes a chain reaction. People tend to notice, and good vibes actually start to perpetuate. It's just like a flower with good scent. People notice that. Ending that cycle of hatred, it's the same way, but even in a higher magnitude. Let's go to the third quote. You should not think lightly of evil. It will not come to me. by the falling of drops of water. A water pot is filled. The fool is filled with evil, though he practice it little by little. You should not think lightly of good. It will not come to me by the falling of drops of water. A water pot is filled. The wise one is filled with good, though he practice it little by little. Basically what's being said here, and this comes from chapter 9, which is titled Evil. What's being said here is that actions accumulate over time. You might be overwhelmed with the negativity that's happening in the world, and you might think that, well, what can I do? One person. What kind of difference can I make? But it is true that if you make one action and you keep doing that action over and over again, whether that's an evil action or a good action, it's going to accumulate. So if you do evil actions over and over and over again, they're going to accumulate and it's going to begin to matter, even from one person. And the same thing is true with good actions. If you do one good action, it'll make a difference, albeit small. But if you keep making good actions, if you keep doing them over and over again, if you keep responding to negativity with positivity over and over and over again, that will accumulate and it will make a big difference over time. And that's the Buddhist teaching. If there is no wound in your hand, you can carry poison in your hand. Poison does not attack one who is unwounded. There is no evil for one who does not do evil. And that quote is meaning you can handle the negativity if you dedicate yourself to being positive or doing good, or saying to yourself like, okay, I'm going to be a constructive change. I'm not going to be destructive. If you make that decision for yourself, then you will not be receptive to negativity. It will not harm you in the way that it was intended. The quote says, if you don't have a cut on your hand, the poison's not going to get through into your system. So if you're not filled with hatred or rage, then hatred and rage will not come into your system and you won't be affected by it. Let's move on to the next quote. Quote number 4. This comes from chapter 6, The Wise Man. Irrigators lead the water. Fletchers shape the arrow. Carpenters shape the wood. The wise control themselves. As a solid rock is not moved by the wind, the wise are not shaken amid blame or praise. Just like a deep lake, clear and undisturbed, the wise grow peaceful on hearing Dhamma teachings. So this quote is talking about a wise man. What is a wise person? What is wisdom? Well, wisdom starts with self-control, with not responding to negativity, hatred in the same way. To be able to control yourself and to respond back with positivity, with constructivism, with meaningful change. You do that through self-control. So wisdom first starts with self-control. One who would not, for his own sake or another's, seek a son, wealth, a kingdom, not seek his own success through injustice, is virtuous, wise, and just. What does that mean? Again, it's self-control, but we're talking more so about accepting the standards of society, the normality of negativity, of hatred, not to accept it. I tend to listen to this quote and it reminds me of, how the whole saying of, this is a dog-eat-dog world and there are losers and there are winners, right? And to be a winner, somebody's got to lose. And, the big dogs eat the little dogs. And this is a small pond and you got to be the big fish. Wisdom is about rejecting that notion, that mentality that's been normalized in our society, and realizing that does not have to be the case, that such negativity, such hatred ingrained in reality can be rejected, and we can start from that rejection and respond with positive vibes, right? Positivity, constructive change. Let's move on to the next quote. This is the 5th quote I'm going to share with you. This comes from chapter 12. Self. By self alone, evil is done. By self, one is defiled. By self, evil is not done. By self, one is purified. Purity and impurity are individual matters. No one can purify another. You should not neglect your own benefit. For another's benefit, great though it be, understanding your own benefit, you should pursue your own benefit. Now, what does this mean? This whole block that I've said, what I think it means is that, again, it starts with oneself, with you. That's where it starts. If you want to make positive change, if you're surrounded by negativity or hatred, or you're overwhelmed with negative vibes and things like that, and you're looking at society, and you're like, I want to make a change. Who do you look at? How do you start? Do you look at the other person? Do you look at the person causing the negativity? No, what you look for is yourself. No, the first step is to look at oneself. That's the first step. That's when you can make the change. So when it talks about understanding your own benefit, you should pursue your own benefit. What I think it's saying is that you gotta understand that if you want to make positive change, it's about you. It starts with you. It's your benefit. It's more so about looking within to cause the change, the constructive change to happen, rather than starting from without. Let's move on to the next quote, shall we? Quote number 6. This comes from chapter 17, anger. This is an ancient truth, Atula. Not just for today. Folk blame the one who sits silent. They blame the one who says a lot. They blame the one who says little, too. No one in this world is not blamed. There never was, there never will be, nor is there found today a person who is altogether blamed or altogether praised. Right? So even back in the Buddha's day, he's just letting you know, like, haters are gonna hate. That's just how it is. There's always gonna be negativity. You're always gonna be blamed for something, right? There's always gonna be the case where negativity is gonna be overwhelming you at some point. That's always how it's gonna be. And that's always how it ever was. But how do you deal with this fact? But the one whom the wise praise, when they've observed him day after day, one of the flawless conduct, wise, endowed with wisdom and morality, who would dare to blame him? An ornament of new gold? Him the gods too praise. He is praised even by Brahma. So what does that mean? That means like what we were talking about before, about how your actions accumulate over time. So if you keep responding to negativity in a positive way over and over and over again, if your goal is constructive change and you're doing that by being constructive and focusing on the meaning behind your actions rather than just simply the visceral response to them, if you do that, then your actions will become meaningful. This is how you really can fight against the negativity and the hatred. And this really begins the definition of wisdom. Let's continue to the next quote. Others' faults are easy to see, while your own are hard to see. The faults of others you winnow like chaff. You hide your own, as a cunning gambler hides a bad throw. If you contemplate the faults of others, always seeking cause for offense, your defilements increase. You're far from the destruction of the defilements. And that comes from chapter 18 called Rust, right? If you just focus on the hatred, that's all you're focusing on, the negativity, the haters out there, then again, you're not going to really create anything positive. You're not going to create anything constructive, but ultimately you're not going to do anything meaningful, right? It's not about focusing on the faults of others or the flaws of the people causing the adversity or the negativity or the hatred. It's about focusing on your reaction. It's focusing on you and how you can react. What can you do to create the change that will make things more positive, more constructive, more meaningful? What is it that you can do? This is what you should be focusing on. Not focusing on the hate, rather focusing on the positive change. Again, this is what wisdom is. Let's go to the next quote. This comes from chapter 19, the just. Someone is not a justice because he tries a case in haste. The learned one who looks into what's the case and not the case, who not hastily but justly, fairly leads others. Protected by the Dhamma, the wise one is called a justice. Someone is not learned because he talks a lot. One who is patient, free from hatred and fear, is called learned. Not by silence does someone become a sage, if he's foolish and ignorant. A wise one who, as though holding scales, takes up the better choice and avoids evil, he's a sage. He's a sage because of that. If he understands both in the world, he's called a sage because of that. So this quote is talking about what really is wisdom, right? And the title of this chapter that this quote is from is called The Just. And it's about how do you determine who is just and who is not just? And how does this relate to wisdom? Well, what's being said here is the importance of critical thinking. It's not someone who just makes rash decisions. It's not someone who just is loud and talks a lot or talks over people or just constantly is on a soapbox giving you their opinion, right? It's not just someone who is completely silent and just doesn't want to react to what's the negativity that's happening in the world and kind of just shies away. That's not wise either. The wise person is someone who responds to the negativity, actually responds to the negativity, but not in the same way, but in a more positive, more constructive way. And how is that done? Critically. It's taking a step back. It's like, okay, all this negativity is coming at me. What can I do? Me, myself. How can I turn this negativity around and create positive change? What is it that I have to do to make that happen? Asking yourself this question, trying to find the answer to that, that's wisdom. This is a Buddhist way of thinking. And I think it's important to think about that kind of thinking in this day and age where we got so much negativity going around in our current climate, our current environment. But like what's said in the Dhammapada, there's always negativity, right? There's always going to be the haters, and haters are going to hate, right? That's always going to be the case. The question becomes not so much what is that negativity? The question is, okay, how do I respond to that negativity? How do I create positive change, meaningful change? And that is the heart of wisdom. Check out the Dhammapada, a definitive text in Buddhism. If you want to know more about Buddhism, it's a great read. This theme that I'm talking about, this concept, is just one of many, many, many concepts covered in the Dhammapada. It's actually not that long of a text, but it has a lot of concepts in it. And you can learn quite a lot from it, whether you're a Buddhist or not. Well, you've been watching The Black Ponder. Thanks for watching. Tune in next time for more philosophical thought.